welcome to the PocketGamer.biz podcast Week in Mobile Games, where we discuss the week's news and provide some insights. I'm Craig Chapple, Head of Content at PocketGamer.biz. With me today, as always, is our news editor, Aaron Astle. We're back. Aaron, you've also had some holiday. How you doing? What have you been up to?
Yeah, not bad, thank you. I've been enjoying the new Pokemon Legends EA came out towards the end of last week.
I forgot it was out.
Yeah, it's been quite a long wait for it. This is sort of the longest wait between kind of big Pokemon titles, probably for as long as I've been into the series. So it was 3 years ago that Scarlet and Violet came out, whereas for a while they were doing new releases like every year.
I was going to say, I thought they'd actually ramped it up recent years.
Yeah, they did through like the 2010s. There was basically, I think other than 2015, there was a game like every single year. But yeah, it's been, I think it was like November 2022, Scarlet and Violet came out. So it's been a long wait for this one. And it's pretty good so far.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
So the I guess from what I remember, the things that people didn't like were the graphics. Maybe wasn't the right development forward for this particular series, because now you can do like battles. I don't really know much about it. Whereas the previous one, that wasn't the focus, right? You could just catch Pokemon, and that was kind of it. So what's changed? What's good? What's bad?
Yeah, so I guess early-ish impressions. So it's much more battle focused, as you say. At least for what. So we had one Legends game before to kind of base what the Legends moniker means for the series, and that was very catching oriented. And there were battles as you went through the story, but way fewer than in kind of the main series. And it really was just about, like, to complete a Pokedex entry, you'd have to like catch so many of the same species and evolve them and see them use different moves, which I quite liked. It made it feel a bit more thorough to actually, get the Pokedex entry. Like, you'd have to actually have observed the Pokemon for a while. But then, so you're spending a lot of your time doing that rather than battling other trainers. And also because it was set in the past before there are many trainers, like most people are scared of Pokemon in Legends Arceus. Whereas Legends EA is a sequel to one of the main series games, X and Y. So that's set in kind of modern times where obviously everyone is a Pokemon trainer. And so, yeah, it's very battle focused, but they're kind of, I guess, semi-real-time battles now. Like, each of your moves has like a recharge time, but as long as they have recharged, you can use them. So, like, you could use 4 moves in a row if you want, but then you've got to wait for all of them to recharge again.
Feels like it has less to do with the Legends moniker in more ways than one. So it's not set in like a legendary time.
No.
And it's closer to a normal Pokemon game.
So now it kind of feels like Legends just means like experimental diversion from the 8 gym formula, but yeah, obviously everyone kind of assumed Legends was going to mean, they're going to be set in the past. It's definitely, it runs a lot better than Scarlet and Violet, which was my main priority.
Sounds interesting. Maybe I'll check. Because I really did not like the first Pokemon Legends, but that was because the onboarding, like the intro, if you like.
Oh yeah,
I guess onboarding is very much a mobile term, but it's just so boring. But for like a substantial amount of time,
yeah,
first 30 minutes at least, they just talk at you, and I was like, I didn't care what anyone had to say. I was just like pressing A, and it still took like 30 minutes, and I was like, do you know what? Life's too short. Screw this.
Modern Pokemon games they've got a bit of a problem with overly long kind of tutorial openings where, as you say, like you maybe got like half an hour in. I'd say it probably takes a good like 2 or 3 hours to get through to actually have hands off. You can go and do what you want now in Legends Arceus.
That's ridiculous.
Similar in Scarlet and Violet. I think I was probably like 2.5 hours into Legends EA before I could actually choose what I wanted to do next. It's like they're fun once you get through it, but you just know that like the day one actually starting the game is going to be a bit of a slog.
But then that makes me not want to get it, because it's like I don't want to have to play for this boring. I get all games like have tutorials, whatever, but they can make it fun.
Yeah,
and I think there's definitely a problem that some games have, like in mobile. I was talking about this with Oscar recently, Oscar Clark, and it was like, I can't remember what game we were talking about. I think it was King Shot. That's actually really good at the intro. So like I'm going a bit on a tangent now, but like say like a forex strategy game, or like a lot of more complex mobile games, they sort of just play the game for you, and then like, but they do it so much kind of badly that after it's done all the hand holding for ages, I'm like, one, I feel like I finished that session and I haven't really done anything, and secondly, as I this is probably more just a me thing, but I then just sort of forget everything I've just been told because I'm literally just going, yes, thank you, yes. And then when it actually comes to me having to do stuff, I'm like, oh, what do I do? They should really get into kind of the meat of it straight away. I think random one again. I guess there's two random things. Or any shows things I've heard from, the professionals. I guess the first one, isn't it? Like in Doom, John Romero, he said like make the first level last because that's where you kind of teach everyone exactly the things they know. So the things that they need to know, and you'll have kind of perfected the level design, what the game is. You can kind of, I guess, do things. I guess what he means is to kind of do things in the most interesting way possible, using people into the game. And then if anyone's played, it's different. But if anyone's played Clair Obscur, there is a lot of talking in the intro, but it is done so well. Like it's like interspersed with, but it's just a really good script, to be honest. Whereas Pokemon Legends, it just wasn't. It was just boring to me. So that might be sacrilegious to someone out there. And then it's really interesting. And then you play a bit, you walk around, and it does such a really good way of introducing the story, where it feels like you're living it with them, rather than someone's just going, "This is what this is." This is how you do this. This is why we're here. And it's like when you're kind of just fed all that, it's just really boring. So I guess my takeaway is don't just feed everyone stuff. Just make it feel a bit more natural and get to like the meat of it quicker, so people know what the game is. My useless advice, having never made a game. There you go, everyone. Right. Thanks, Aaron. I guess as for myself, I've not really been out to that much. I'm back home now, so hopefully we'll keep these podcasts going. I keep saying that each week, but things are settling down now, so it's good to be back on the show, and we'll get straight into it. So first, as always, a few shout outs to our events. We just did Pocket Gamer Connects Helsinki. Thanks for everyone that was at the show. It went very well. We'll have the videos up on the site soon. I want to say in the next week or two. We do reasonably quick these days, in a few weeks. We've got the Pocket Gamer Connect Summit Korea coming up on October 1st. Then we've got PGC Aqaba, which is in Jordan, on November 8th and 9th. We're talking all about, obviously, the Middle East, North Africa industry, as well as some global trends. Then the big one, PGC London, January 19th to 20th. So grab your tickets. I think it's still early birds now. You're going, you might as well get a cheap ticket. Right? And then we'll have more kind of to announce next year. And don't forget to check out the top 50 that we announced recently. Just a couple of weeks ago now, top 50 mobile game makers, and the kind of the who's who right now in mobile. And obviously let us know if you like the list. Let us know if you hated it and why. And that's all good feedback for us. Helps us with the next one. And in a couple of weeks, we'll be announcing the top 13 MENA game makers as well. So be sure to check that out coming soon. Right, so the news. There's a few interesting stories. One of the ones that caught my eye was the US judge has granted a 1-week extension to comply with the Epic Games injunction for Google. So weird. That's kind of weird. So on October 22nd was when Google was supposed to basically open up its store. Obviously, Android is technically an open ecosystem, but for Google Play, it was going to open up, and it wouldn't be like just having to sideload stores and then Google telling you how awful that is for security and privacy. Well, for security reasons. But the privacy one's all Apple, isn't it? And so one of those things is like opening up billing. So that's kind of basically what's happened with the App Store in the other Epic case. I think in this case, for Google, it was monopolistic behavior. There is actually proven it had done certain things. And for Apple, it was because it just was not adhering to what the judge was saying. And then eventually the judge was like, screw you, the whole thing's open. The worst possible outcome for Apple. For now, I think that it could still be appealed. So this particular case, Google's supposed to open up Google Play to alternative stores and billing systems on the 22nd. We were getting emails from some of the D2C companies. I think AppCharge kind of announced its Android billing, like the day before this was supposed to happen, for example. And then weirdly, both Google and Epic asked for a delay of a week. So an extension of this ruling to take effect. So now, for now, the ruling, and it's been signed by the judge, is October 29th instead of October 22nd. So I guess we'll see what happens next week. Will it be extended again? There wasn't a reason provided as to why, but more strange because Tim Sweeney himself has said from October 22nd, developers will be legally entitled to steer US Google Play users out of app payments without fees, air screens, and friction, same as the Apple App Store for users in the US. But yeah, there's no reason provided. It's hard to even speculate. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's just a technical thing. One thing was that Google, I believe, is appealing, and they have until, I don't have a date here. I think it's either the 29th or the 27th. I might be making this up. I just don't have it in front of me. That actually Google could appeal to the Supreme Court. So I think that's going to happen. And then maybe they'll get a stay from that. So this could kind of rumble on. So you won't actually, in the US, this is all US only, be able to do those link outs to other payments for longer. See, I don't know what Epic's reason would be to support this. It could, I have literally no idea. So I'm just grasping at straws. One ridiculous thing I could say, I guess, is maybe it's like, okay, well, should we just get this appeal out of the way and do it properly? It seems like a really weak reason. But what's the point in having Android link outs for 1 week and then it kind of reverts back and everyone's confused with what's happening? And everyone could potentially start breaking the rules accidentally. Maybe. I doubt it, but that's one random reason that I have. But yeah, it's really interesting that, again, just regulation coming up, the App Store, Google Play opening up once again. As always, we'll just see how they progress. It's just been like one of the big themes of 2025 and going into 2026. Regulation, which we've spoken about a bunch of times in various forms, and the opening up of app stores. I'll have more on that later. But Aaron, what's your next story?
Yeah, so next from me is that HoYoverse's next game is soon going to be entering closed beta. So this is Petit Planet, which on November 7th is going to be made available on iOS and PC. They're calling the test the coziness test, because this is supposed to be like a cozy life sim game as opposed to kind of the RPG style titles they've kind of become famous for with like Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail. So like more details have kind of been emerging on this, I guess, over the past like month, because we've kind of known this title's been in the works for a while. It was back in February 2024 that the original like trademark was registered in China, and then they kind of got a license approval for it in July 2024. It's kind of been known through a few different names over that time. There's a Chinese name I'm not going to try and pronounce, and then it was like Asterweave, Haven, and then last October when the US trademark was filed, it kind of got renamed as Petit Planet, which they seem to have stuck with now. And yeah, so at kind of the end of September, they finally like released a trailer for the game, which I guess was the kind of official unveiling, because before it was all just stuff from like trademarks and license approval things. But it's basically, I guess it's kind of Animal Crossing-y by the looks of it. You can like go fishing and crafting and mine stuff and plant things, and I guess they'll kind of encourage you to play every day to keep up with your little planet, basically. So yeah, I think one of the most interesting things about it to me is just how different this is genre-wise compared to the big successes that HoYoverse has had, and I guess whether it's indicative of the kind of cannibalization situation between titles. Obviously, like Zenless Zero still we made somewhere around $500 million now. It was over 400 million in its first year, but which obviously that's a lot of money. But it didn't even do like as a quarter as well as Genshin Impact's first year. So I guess maybe they decided, Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail are still huge RPGs. Maybe there's not a lot of point releasing more in the same genre at the minute. So they're kind of experimenting with other things.
So, as you say, it looks really like a cross between kind of an Animal Crossing and just it, and then it brings in kind of the anime style. It's really interesting that they're going into cozy games, which the last few years is just I just keep hearing it over and over again. I think it's not always that successful, like Infinity Nikki. Well, it doesn't seem like Infinity Nikki's been that successful, but it did have a big presence at Gamescom, if that's anything to go by. And I mean, it makes some money, and I presume on other platforms it makes it as well, so maybe it's just humming along fine. I'm probably reading too much into this, but you're right. I think it is different to what they've done before, and I think maybe that is a bit of a recognition of they can't just repeat the same formula. However, what I find fascinating is kind of like with Genshin Impact, it felt like they built upon what they'd done before, right? So mentioned before with like Honkai Impact third, big RPG, and then they just went to the next level, invested a crap load into that. Whereas this, if you think about some of the mega updates that have gone into Genshin Impact, for example, I'm pretty sure you could do things like fishing, and maybe some of these other things are kind of in there. I wonder if they're just building on what they've already got and just kind of repackaging it and putting it into this new. So it's not like, I wouldn't say it was like completely different to what they've done before, but they're just repackaging the stuff that they found works, presumably, and they thought, well, we'll try it in this kind of way. I think when MiHoYo, HoYoverse, Cognisphere, etc., when they release a game, it's one of those few companies that you take notice the release, because in theory you'd expect it to be making like hundreds of millions of dollars at least, based on their history, like you were saying. So definitely a big one to watch. I'd love to find out one day how much they actually invested in this game. If we remember, Genshin Impact, $100 million to make it, $200 million a year to run it. So I'm curious, have they gone to that same massive investment in this, or have they scaled that down a bit in a different market? Cool. Right, moving on to the next one. So back to regulation. I remember, so I'll read the story. So the UK's Competition and Markets Authority, the CMA, has confirmed that Apple and Google meet the criteria for strategic market status on their strategic market status. So this is kind of reserved for big technology companies. It's basically the same as, in some regards, the idea is the same to the Digital Markets Act in the EU. But because of Brexit reasons, we have to then do our own thing and be much slower, apparently. Because I remember talking about this earlier this year, where it was like, we're thinking about giving them strategic market status. And I was just thinking, really? This is like real slow walking into it. And when that was kind of announced, Epic came out as well and said, this is ridiculous. Like, you're taking far too long. You're basically delaying it, really to the advantages of Apple and Google. So the consequence of this is it kind of potentially affects like their operating systems, app distribution, browsers, etc. So the concerns outlined earlier in the year from the CMA for its investigations were an inconsistent and unpredictable app review processes, distant app store search rankings that may favor apps owned by Apple and Google, the 30% share, and anti-steering measures for restrictions on feature access, functionality, and choice architecture, default settings, pre-installation, prominence, prompts, and friction that may favor their own services, which limit competition and genuine choice for users. And all this regulation has basically been pushed to 26. The consequences seem pretty clear. It'll probably be very similar things, anti-steering. But in this new world, which is since Trump, anything could happen, really. What if, for example, Trump comes out and says, if you do this, we'll slap 20%, 50% tariffs on you? Like, will the UK go through with it? I'm curious if that kind of thing would happen. America, in general, it's not just a Trump thing. America, in general, really doesn't like it when other countries pick on, as they would see it, pick on their big tech companies, even if it is like, even if there is monopolistic behavior, etc. They just think, oh, you're just picking on them. You just want to get money out of these companies, because Apple and Google then go kind of crying to the government as well. So another one. Yet again, wait and see. This was the year of kind of regulation. 2026 will be very much the same. Maybe a bit more consequential in 2026. By the way, random, aside from all this, we're still waiting on the EU's ruling as well as what it's going to do with Apple. They haven't said it. If you remember, like a while back, it was like, well, we'd hear exactly what the latest, whether they're going to accept Apple's new business terms, their latest ones, or not. There was reported that even though the App Store's business terms were insane, are insane, that because they're so convoluted. I think I might have done a story. Instead of before, it was like, pay us 30%. effectively. And then there were some things like, eventually it was like 50% after this. As the regulations start coming in, then you got reading apps. It gets all more confusing. When they released their alternative business terms, their latest ones for the EU, it's like over 25,000 words or something across multiple documents. It's ridiculous. People got to keep up with this. Yeah, we still haven't heard the latest on that. And I can only think that's a political thing. I can't think of any. Is it really that slow to come up with, like, well, they're breaking the rules or they're not, and I feel like it's just way past the deadlines, any deadlines that were set. But worth keeping an eye on that, what happens there, because say the UK does try and do some similar things to the DMA, Apple might just use those same terms, and then you would presume it would probably be okay in the UK. Otherwise, UK's regulator, its position might be unreasonable, right? If the EU's gone, that's fine. Why would the UK be different?
Yeah.
You sort of saw a bit of that with the Activision Blizzard acquisition about cloud gaming, which is ridiculous as well. Remember, Ubisoft's basically operating like the cloud games of like Activision or something. You never hear about these things anymore. I mean, Ubisoft's got other things going on. We weren't going to cover it today, but there are a lot of layoffs going on at Ubisoft, so they've got other things to be thinking about, I guess. Ubisoft Red Links has just had a bunch of layoffs, and I saw today Massive Entertainment, so there's just basically company-wide layoffs despite Tencent's investment, setting up a new subsidiary. Yeah. Anyway, there's so much going on there. Aaron, so we go from another tangent. What else have we got? The big story of the week, probably.
Yeah, so as most listeners are probably aware, but Amazon Web Services had an outage earlier this week, which impacted like loads of services and games like Pokemon Go, Fortnite, Roblox, Clash Royale. And I was surprised, really kind of realizing, I guess, just how many like games and services more broadly like rely on this. And I guess, you occasionally get these little reminders of like how basically everything relies on kind of these tech infrastructures working, and like so many businesses just, you just have to hope they're going to work for your whole business to operate. Which I don't mean that as a criticism in any way. It's just, it's weird when something does go wrong, and then it's like basically, potentially like thousands of companies can't do their work basically because someone else has had an issue. It's just like, it's back now. We just hope it doesn't happen again. But yeah, I was quite surprised how many like games, like big games as well, were just down because of an Amazon issue.
So the impact as soon as we log on for work that day, like everything's kind of falling apart, right? And I can't remember if our CMS was slow that day, but somehow we sort of weren't that affected. But anyway, the games that were impacted were games and platforms that are impacted were Clash Royale, Roblox, Pokemon Go, Fortnite, and then you had other platforms: Duolingo, WhatsApp, Steam, PlayStation Network, Xbox, Apex Legends, Rocket League, Dead by Daylight, Reddit, Zoom, and Slack. I think the Epic Games Store, and then a few of these like releasing statements throughout the day. I think Duolingo might be released a statement like the next day of AWS going down. But yeah, so big widespread outage. I think they pinned it down to somewhere in the US. Something had gone wrong. The interesting context around it. So apparently, Amazon had actually been replacing. This headline is: Amazon allegedly replaced 40% of its AWS DevOps workers with AI days before the crash. I've heard that elsewhere in terms of they were kind of moving things to AI. And then, I heard there's been maybe a bit of a brain drain from there. And this was perhaps you see some places like the inevitable consequence of this happening. Hopefully it doesn't happen again. I'm curious if Amazon has to pay kind of fines, compensation to clients. Because if it's a day down for like Clash Royale, that's like a lot of money. And then if it was a day down for Steam, blocking all these payments, it's a lot of money for all these companies to lose. I wonder if it means that they'll just use another provider. But there's not that many big providers like this, right? You got AWS, Azure, and then for games, there's like a few game-centric ones. So yeah, it was definitely that situation, like you said, where it was you just have this realization that but when something bad happens, it's like, oh yeah, all of this stuff is just run by like a couple of companies. And then you get the memes where it's like someone's like, I can't remember what it is. It's like someone put like down like dominoes, but like, so you starts with the small one and ends with, and then they gradually get bigger. The first one they put down, or like the first brick they put down, is we should sell books online. And then the final one is like society collapses, or like internet infrastructure collapses. So yeah, it was that was a really the biggest thing probably in the news this week. It seems to have all recovered now. We'll see if it happens again.
Yeah. So I think a lot of it had kind of recovered by the afternoon, because I was off work that day. I had a bit of holiday time, so I had a nice lie in that day. So I woke up, saw the news that everything had gone down, and then it's like, oh, but it's back now. So I just slept through all the chaos.
So another quick story I've got, my last one, is Unity gets into direct consumer with a cross-platform unified digital stores. So I've got the press release, I guess, in front of me. So, and I love reading these because they're always full of nonsense. And this one, it doesn't. I'd argue it doesn't really. Ultimately, you could say it's payments. It doesn't really make clear completely what they're doing. But today announced an enhancement of the Unity engine that will enable game developers to manage their global commerce and catalog from a single dashboard within Unity itself. So today, selling across platforms means juggling multiple SDKs, rules, and payout systems. With this enhancement, developers will be able to combine different payment providers, optimize for different markets, and manage pricing, promotions, and live operations across mobile app stores, web, and PC from any platform, etc., etc. So basically, they've partnered with Stripe, and they're going to power, like we're talking about the opening of app stores, you can now do alternative billing. They're going to power that, and you can do it through Unity. Right, so I'll be honest, I'm not completely clear they actually mean that you can build web shops through Unity. I guess it looks like you can, but I don't know, because that's basically the essential offering of an Exola or an App Charge or a Stash that have kind of emerged. Well, Exola's been around for ages. The other ones kind of emerged over the last few years. Which is, yeah, you can do the payments, but also we have, like, you could build your web shops through us, basically, or other sort of direct consumer practices. It's potentially a big move for Unity. It does make sense. I'm curious also how it's going to work with, if at all, it works with Vector. So my only thinking is there any, they're basically, one of the things that they're trying to promote with Vector is potentially they could access engine data. And so if they create a payment service, is there any interesting data that they can use from that? So you have player potentially, probably don't know what I'm talking about, but potentially to compete with AppLovin, Unity will have access to what players are doing in a game. And then if they've got the payment side of it, they have access, maybe or more access to exactly how much users are spending, which users are spending, and maybe you can target those particular users better, and when and what they're spending on, and maybe that will help with their ads business. I thought that might be part of where this is going, because it seems like a good thing to do for Unity anyway. You've got why not? But they'll probably be thinking of a broader strategy. Maybe there's something within that. Maybe not this is the way I described it, but there's something there. But yeah, everyone, direct consumer, kind of like what I was saying, regulations, big thing 2025. Once again, I think it was kind of last year as well, but direct consumer, really, really big this year and going into next year. They're both kind of hand in hand. So if regulation ultimately fails, so will DTC. Well, in a way, so will direct consumer, even though the genie's already out the bottom.
I found it interesting you saying about looking at the press release there that like they don't actually say direct consumer anywhere, but like that is what it kind of sounds like it is. Like the unified digital stores, and kind of says about giving developers more control over optimizing different markets. Like it all screams ETC then, but they don't actually directly say that anywhere.
Didn't even think of that. They don't mention like the basically the key term.
Like they left out the buzzword.
I wonder if that's deliberate or just a mistake. I feel like that's a mistake. I mean, it's not for consumers, right? But any consumer reading that wouldn't care. But yeah, like as a small marketing thing, yeah, you should say for direct consumer practices, because they even mentioned like 120 billion in-app purchases a year, like the opening up, basically. They at least allude to kind of the opening up of the app stores, I think. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
curious that they're actually saying. Right, so that brings us neatly to the end of the week in mobile games. Thanks, Aaron, as always, for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, good to be back.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. We should be back as usual next week. Thanks as always for tuning in. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.